February 28th, 2026. Well, are we on the verge of a war right now or what? Very interesting here. The situation in Iran, with Iran, let's say, is certainly getting tense. And more and more U.S. forces now, F-22s, have been deployed, I believe, to a base in Israel. And we've got a large amount of F-35s, F-15 aircraft, the strike versions, I think, F-16s. We have 2 aircraft carrier groups, a bunch of escort ships, all converging on the area. And the diplomatic negotiations have been going on, and they've been labeled productive from the Iranian side and not so much productive from Donald Trump's side. Of course, you have to remember that Trump does not want to sound like he's weakening. He needs to keep the pressure on to get whatever he can get if he wants to do it. Because there's a lot of confusion about this whole situation and what the real story is. And you can get a lot of different people give you answers depending on their particular biases and perspectives. First of all, on Judge Napolitano, he has this late Friday afternoon intelligence review with Larry Johnson and Ray McGovern, which I kind of like to watch that when it's only like a half hour. And these are 2, if you don't watch this, these are 2 former CIA officers who are kind of, I think, have dissident voices compared to the mainstream of the CIA. And at any rate, they're certainly, any rate, they're knowledgeable people, and they obviously have contacts and people. They're in the loop of people that know things, but they're probably not getting any classified briefings, if you see what I'm saying. And so anyhow, Larry Johnson's convinced the attack is just about to happen, probably before most of you even see this video. On the other hand, Ray McGovern is convinced it really won't happen, and that this is largely a negotiation ploy in which eventually Trump will come up with a deal that will assure that Iran won't get a bomb, and the whole thing will not go off explosively like some people think. So anyway, that's kind of the situation. I thought it was just an interesting debate between the 2. They really, usually these people agree. This is what they don't agree on. And so anyhow, so again, a little bit of what I think here. I mean, the fact is we've deployed a lot of equipment there. There is a logistics aspect to this whole thing. I don't think it's, some people try to make analogies to the beginning of World War I, but I don't think it's quite that tense. But because for one thing, the U.S. has used up so much of a stockpile of ordnance and supplying, supplying Israel in their Gaza and Lebanon operations, and also, and other things, of course, been sent to Ukraine and so forth. So we're not sure right now. Plus, remember, we also had our own Midnight Hammer operation, and there's a little bit of interesting things on that. So, at any rate, if you like these videos, please give me a like, subscribe, click the bell for notifications, or you can also follow me on Rumble. Now, and stick with me here because there's some more interesting things I want to get into. So, first off, okay, the problem we're faced with here is that the Iranians, they're close to the Persian Gulf. They're the Persian Gulf area, and they have the Straits of Hormuz as a very narrow area. And it's unclear to me if any of the U.S. military activities can actually prevent them, for instance, dumping a large number of sea mines into that area, and basically ending all the shipments of oil from that, that area from the Saudis and so forth, the Emirates and all that. And that would be a major hit to the world oil supply, which would have an economic shock effect. Now, I guess if the United States becomes totally for us, and we have our own internal oil, that's true. But, a lot of our oil does go to our allies in the Middle East, in the Far East, because it's more economical to ship the oil from Alaska to, say, Japan or that area, and to, import oil from Canada. It's sort of a trade-off. We get the counterbalancing oil from Canada, as an example. So, and there's a world price of oil. All I can go by is the market. And one ETF I'm involved in right now is XLE, the energy ETF, and it's been going up ever since this crisis has been gaining momentum. So I tend to think if it actually goes full scale, it'll go up higher. Speculation, maybe. I think it will reverse our downward prices in gasoline, though, if it actually happens. And that's not good for Trump in the election. Because to me, the really strategic issue to me is the home front at this point. I'm not so much worried about what Iran is going to do in the following sense. Because, let's be blunt, if they wanted to have a bomb, they'd already have one. I mean, what have they been? This whole, we have to assume that they're completely incompetent. I mean, we look at the countries that did make a bomb, and they're not stupid people. They're making all kind of missiles and everything else. If they wanted to make a bomb, they could have made a bomb. It's not that I trust them. It's just the fact they haven't done it tells me that they're probably not likely to do it, particularly if we make a deal with them. The other thing is, the other problem, though, that stirred this whole thing up, of course, is they're supporting proxies such as the Houthis, the Hezbollah, and Hamas, who go to war with our ally Israel, and have caused a lot of mayhem, including the use of a lot of our munitions, as you say. So that's one aspect. The other thing is, how effective will this attack be, and what would it accomplish? In terms of, we will certainly be able to destroy a lot of Iranian equipment. I don't think this is a doubt about that at all. I mean, we have a tremendous air power. And here's the other interesting thing. Remember last, June? We had a 12-day war in which Israel was going all out, backed up by the U.S. midnight hammer strike at the very end. Yet we're now trying to basically say, well, that really didn't do the job. And I'm asking, well, will this do the job? In other words, or we just blow up a bunch more stuff, and this time, since we're positioning our forces in the area to this degree and are directly involved, it's quite likely that those people will become under attack from missiles launched by the Iranians, and we will presumably take casualties. Not as many as the Iranians will, of course, but the problem is the political sector at home is kind of maybe fickle. I remember Trump has ran on the idea of avoiding the endless wars, and the question is, can we bring this to a short and effective end? I mean, if the thing goes on for another 12 days and at the end of it, Iran is finished and they're no longer an issue, that's true. But what if they're still there? And what if the Chinese, for instance, starts filtering weapon systems into in there? Maybe they already have, which might inflict some losses on some of our aircraft or ships. I mean, there's 2 ships we have that are actually in the Persian Gulf, and I'm like, those look to me to be setting ducks for short-range missile attack. Unless we get them out of there before the shooting starts, I think they're going to get it. And I think that they're so vulnerable where they are. The actual Abraham Lincoln Task Force is far enough off that it'll be challenging, I think, for the Iranians that do too much damage there. I state with a very optimistic viewpoint, kind of totally pro-American, but then again, how much Chinese weaponry has been provided? And suppose that we're continually trying to plan against that. So that's another thing to think about. And also, what if we win the war, but the war doesn't end? That is to say, we blow up the stuff we want to blow up, and the Iranians still don't agree to anything. And how long do we pursue it? And are we going to do this again without congressional authorization? Can we get some Democrats to vote to do this? So they share the blame a little bit if something doesn't go right. I mean, I guess, as I understand, the Gang of 8 in the Congress have been briefed on it, those that get the highest level intelligence briefings. So we'll have to see what actually occurs. But the whole thing makes me quite nervous. On the other hand, the other theory, which is, let's call a Ray McGovern viewpoint, is that Trump is basically just trying to create a political victory for himself. And at some point, the idea is to get something like the deal that was negotiated under Obama, except for one thing. That had a 10-year life to it. And we would like this one to be a permanent one and more unrestricted inspections of all facilities on demand. And the argument against that right now, the International Atomic Energy Agency is being blocked from looking at the facilities they have right now. So it may undermine the Iranian credibility, as you see. But at any rate, that's the way I look at this thing. I'm just worried we'll get into a quagmire and give the Democrats a political victory in the fall, which to me is more significant than anything Iran's likely to be able to do in the next year. It's kind of my own opinion that I know the team anti-Semitic on Napolitano rages on about this is all some Israeli-inspired whatever other. And there could be some aspects that it's kind of interesting that our own intelligence community asserts that the Iranians are not working on a bomb. They claim they're not, but apparently Israel says they are. So, that's the situation. I even asked, though, from a pro-Israel point of view, is this good for Israel to get us into a quagmire that ends up being a political disaster for a very supportive administration? Maybe they ought to cool their heels a little bit and take the situation they have now. They pretty much defeated Hamas. Hezbollah has been beaten down to where it doesn't do much. Syria has fallen, and so the supply line that the Iranians had through Syria is kind of shut off. So maybe you ought to take the win rather than push for more. Hitler had a big win in 1940, and then he went for everything and lost. Well, I'm not trying to compare him to Hitler, but I'm just saying in the case of political dynamics, when you get too successful, sometimes you overreach, and then you get into real trouble. Let's say Napoleon, okay? Napoleon's invasion of Russia is another example, where, so he conquered most of Europe and then decided to invade Russia, and then ultimately ended up losing everything over it. Where if he hadn't invaded Russia, maybe he'd just be annoyed by Russia breaking the deal they made. Well, I don't want to get involved in history, but I'm just saying too much. But you get the idea I'm saying here. It's always a question mark of what the best thing to do is. And so if we could get a reasonable deal that would prevent them from making a bomb or give us a warning that they're breaking the deal and therefore we could attack at a later date, that might be ideal. I don't know. Again, a lot of it is based on information that none of us in the public have because we don't know to what degree their defenses have been rebuilt. I don't think they've got a whole lot from Russia since last June because they're pretty tied down defending themselves right now, or what do you want to call it? I mean, they're involved in a problem too with these Flamingo missiles. So but we'll have to see what happens. But I say I'm most concerned about the political situation, which the polling doesn't look all that good. I mean, we haven't got a whole lot of polling since the State of the Union address. I would say on that Trump did a very good job on that speech. I feel a lot better than, say, the reaction he had immediately after the Supreme Court ruling. I thought he handled himself well and didn't, make what I would consider mistakes. For instance, he didn't directly attack the Supreme Court during it. He simply said the decision was regrettable. Which, 3 members of the Supreme Court disagreed with it. So it's not like you're an unreasonable person to think that. So anyway, that's what we're waiting for to see if supposedly another round of negotiations is coming, and so or will the attack come? I'm not sure which. I'm a little bit more on the Ray McGovern side of the coin because I don't know that Trump really wants to risk what would happen if he understands what could happen here. So anyway, that's kind of my rundown of the situation on this. We'll still wait to see what the ultimate effect the State of the Union is and his ongoing campaign approach is. In my last video, I did go into some detail on a tactic I think ought to be brought up more. You might want to look at that. Only 12 people or something looked at last I checked, and I thought it was a pretty good video actually. So on the other hand. And then another thing in this whole discussion is, of course, the Trump's UAP statement. Now I understand that that Hegseth, Secretary of War, has said that they're now looking into this whole thing and trying to get the data together that they're going to release or decide what they're going to release. So it's hard to know since here's the problem. Though, is that the Defense Department's own Aero group, which they control very tightly, has been pretty much saying not to see here, right? And so, what's he really going to come up with? Who's he going to rely on to get this information? I don't know if this has even turned into a real executive order yet or not. I would suggest if Trump's really serious about it, he needs to, forget about the congressional panel. Why don't he appoint his own panel? Just get a group of people that have the right level of clearance to do the job, and then put them on a panel and have them go in and independently review everything. Because basically, cut Arrow out of the discussion. I mean, I don't think they're reliable, and they're kind of turned into a disinformation effort. And bring in these whistleblowers to the executive branch. They've talked to Congress. Now let's have them talk to the executive branch, and let's bring in Grush, give him a clearance back on a temporary basis, and nothing else. Put him in a skiff and have him tell them what to look for, and then go get them based on that and see what he knows what he's talking about. I mean, a lot of it's got to be just finding, if he knows the gatekeepers of this program, bring them into the White House, if you will, in the Situation Room, and say, okay, presidential order here. I now revoke any legal authority that's been put over you to not talk about this stuff. Now tell us what you've been doing and what it is. I mean, you got to actually get these guys on the spot. And the president, I think, is the one guy that can actually do it, or his immediate reports, such as the National Security Advisor. I mean, for instance, it was left hanging, on Rubio's statement on Hannity some time back. Okay, now that you're in a position where you theoretically could do something about it, the president said he wants it done, so that should be good enough to get it happening. And these whistleblowers could presumably tell you who to talk to. I think that, this all stems from decades-old executive orders that have been put in place and just carried on without any question for so long. So anyway, that's kind of that's the other thing I'm thinking about now, but I'm a little bit worried about what might happen here. So that'll be all for this time. As always, I post this on YouTube and Rumble, and the address of my social media accounts are in the description below. So all for this time.